Before we get on to the assignment and make our patterns, there's one more piece of this puzzle, and that's how to make a contact sheet, which is a requirement for this assignment. So first off, what is a contact sheet? Well, let me bring one up for you real quick. Ta-da! A contact sheet essentially is a bunch of small images attached onto a bigger sheet here so that you can view which one you want. Now, originally this was part of photography, so you'd use the negatives and you kind of smush them all together on these things. Then you decide what you want to have developed, and that's pretty cool. Now, in Photoshop, what you do is you select a folder containing images, and it will just line all these up and produce that type of sheet so that you could print that out, show people, hey, here's what we have. What would you like to print? That sort of thing. Now, I think they're pretty awesome. And these days they're actually called Contact Sheet 2, and they have been called that for a long time now. I'm going to go to File, Automate, and you'll see we have Contact Sheet 2. I'm going to select that, and we'll see something very similar to the batch processing. We use either files or folders. If you do files, you add in whichever files you want, so they can be from all around your computer. You just browse and put them in, and then you sort them if you want to and remove them, or you can do folder. And we already have those small images, so let's go ahead and use that folder. We'll select our image folder by, we don't want to include subfolders. In this case, if you include subfolders, you can group those images by those folders. We don't need to go that far. We're just going to go back to Action Demo, and this time we're going to go into Small. And actually, let's go into the original sized ones. This will be fine. So they're quite large at this moment. But what we'll do is this. We'll create a document and we'll set it to inches, and we'll make it 8 by 10 inches and 300 PPI. I'm already thinking, okay, this will print. So we need to do pixel or dots per inch, but it's actually pixels still. We'll use our standard color profile with our standard RGB and 8-bit. We'll flatten all layers, and I'll show you what that means in a minute. We'll run it a second time. We'll run it across first and then down, and we'll just do, say, 3 by 3. Get a nice, or 3 by 6. I'm actually not sure how many are in here. Let's take a look. We have 10, so let's do 3 by 4. And that will also let you see what all this means. We're not going to rotate for best fit. We will use auto spacing, and that means that it will automatically space things together. We'll add a little font for now, and we'll run this again in a minute without those settings. So watch it go grab stuff. And then it does free transform, rasterize, doop. So this will be just a minute. Watching it go through all these, taking its time. And in fact, this can take a while, so why don't I pause the video until it completes? See you in a second. Boom, there you have it. Everything has been laid out. So we have these images placed next to each other and auto-spaced, and we could take a look at them and we can see the names placed underneath them. Now, when you look at this, it may look a little messy, and so you might want to do some adjustments. For example, if we went to File, Automate, Contact Sheet 2, we could remove the font, which will no longer use the font. We can uncheck the use file name or caption. This will allow it to fit a little bit better. We can also, instead of using auto spacing, just do a specific spacing, but I'm going to leave this one on for just a second so we can watch one thing at a time. All the same folders and everything. Let's go. And again, I will pause this so you don't have to watch all of them. See you in a second. And there we have it. So let's do a quick comparison with the titles, without the titles. Notice that because we have an automatic spacing, it resized everything a little bit differently. And let's try it without the automatic spacing. I feel as though the best way to understand this is just to see it rather than me just explaining, hey, and look at this. So instead of using auto spacing, we will use the space for vertical space between images and horizontal space. And we'll tell it okay. and I'll see you in just a minute, because once again, it will take a while. And there we go. Now we have one that does not have the automatic spacing and one that does. Notice when it has automatic spacing, it realizes that, hey, maybe we need a little bit more. So depending on what you're going to use the contact sheet for, you may want automatic spacing, and it will resize the images further depending on the surrounding images. Or maybe you want total control, in which case you tell it how much space you want. And in this case, I didn't tell it to have very much space at all, so it's quite small, but you have full control over that. So that essentially is the contact sheet, but you'll notice something else. In the history of the last contact sheet we make, we have some interesting steps. We have a flatten image step and a make layer step. So you notice the make layer step simply unlocks the flattened image and calls it contact sheet 2. But if we go back to flatten image and go one further, we'll see that it's actually created a bunch of miniature images that have masks on them, which is odd because if we cancel these out, you'll see that the masks aren't actually doing anything in this case. So what we can do is now, by stepping back in time a little bit, add an adjustment layer of a solid color of our choice. So we could use, for example, black, or we could use, as another example, a 50% gray. We'll just bring up the brightness to 50%, which will be the 128 gray down the line. And so now hopefully we can see the colors a little bit better because they're isolated with a 50% gray. That's one way you can change the color on the contact sheet, and it's the way I prefer if you just made it. If you didn't just make one, you were handed one, and it has a weird background color, you'll have to do some selection deals. And then from here, you can just flatten things down with Control E, just tell it yes to, cancel. Just tell it no, apply to the mask so that it will start punching those down. And I just keep pressing Control E to flatten down, and there we have it. I could have also just done this, or if we take a couple of steps back, if I hide the background layers here, I can just merge visible by using the flyout option on the layer menu and telling it to merge visible, which for some reason I'm missing because I am not on a visible layer. Now I can merge visible. So now I'll click the flyout and I'll tell it to merge visible. And that I think is a little bit easier. There you have it. So it's possible to change the background color of the contact sheet that way. But if you were to just go File, Automate, Contact Sheet 2, you'd see that there isn't a background image option. So that's really how you get in there and change that. All right, so that's the magic of a contact sheet. I find these to be quite useful if I just need to print something out so that I can show a client what something looks like on print, to give them an idea of different kinds of paper. And this is something we're also going to use with very specific settings for this assignment, so it's important that you know how to do the contact sheet so you can follow the instructions. All right, next up, we're going to finally create a pattern. We're going to go over the offset filter, and that will allow us to create a pattern. Okay, here we go.